house, I actually called one of my Turkish friends who lives in America. I was like, if you don't hear from me for the next 2 hours, call the police. Because I just didn't know what to expect. Anyway, so I went to her house. It was unbelievable. The food was amazing. Some of the dances that they do is like the same thing. Some of the music and every culture was so similar. Then I was going back to my place after the dinner. I started to think, I'm like, there are millions of kids in Middle East growing up anti-Semitic, anti-American, anti-Christian just because of the politicians, you know? And I was like, we gotta do something about it. And then, you know, I've been here since 2009, you know, and I can proudly say that, I'm gonna tell you guys a little bit about the story of it too. I can proudly say that I'm finally became a citizen of this beautiful country 2 years ago. It was an unbelievable moment.
Awesome.
It was probably the most proudest moment in my life, but that's pretty much how everything started.
Fantastic. And when you were in the NBA, you know, you weren't quiet. You know, you were very vocal about your opposition to the Turkish government and Erdogan. Tell us more specifically about your criticisms of Erdogan and of what's going on in Turkey for those who may not be familiar.
You know, Turkey once was obviously the bridge of Islam and West. But when Erdogan came into power, obviously just because of all the human rights violations and political prisoners and how Erdogan is using his power, Erdogan's regime using his power to abuse Interpol system and stuff, that bridge is gone, you know? So I remember I started to, my third year in the league, I started to talk about the problems that are happening in Turkey, and because of the platform, every time I say something, it was becoming a conversation. So the more the news outlets actually started to give me a platform, I started to talk about it, and those things affected me and my family. My dad, you know, was a scientist. They fired him. My sister went to medical school for 6 years, and actually she still cannot find a job. I think the saddest one was my little brother because, you know, he wanted to be like his big brother and play an NBA and stuff, but he was getting kicked out of every team because of the same last name. So they were getting affected so much, they had to put a statement out there and said, we are disowning Enes. The Turkish government didn't believe that. They sent police to my house in Turkey. They raided the whole house and they took every electronics away, phones, computers, laptops, iPads, because they wanted to see if I am still in contact with my family or not. They couldn't find no evidence, but they still took my dad in jail for a while. But we put so much pressure from here to Turkey, they had to let him go. And then they revoked my passport. They put my name on Interpol list. I mean, in their eyes, I'm an international criminal. Recently, I don't know if you guys seen it or not, but they actually put a bounty on my head. So I can only go to 29 countries in the world because some of the other countries that if I ever travel, then I would be deported back to Turkey, you know? So it's been a very difficult experience to just dealing with a dictatorship like that. So for sure it's interesting.
Yeah, a $500,000 bounty, right? Yeah. The threat of imprisonment, all for simply speaking freely. For criticizing.
Exactly. So that's what I was like trying to tell some of my friends here. Like, you know, I'm sure, I mean, some of my teammates especially, they love to like criticize America, which I'm not saying we're perfect, but many of them calls it trash. Many of them say so many crazy things about America, but I'm like, listen, let's some of those countries out there, you will be hanged, you know? So I just hope that they can understand how blessed they are to be in this country like that.
Yeah, it was only recently there was a WNBA player, right? And the irony of that, a WNBA player speaking out against America when we had a WNBA player imprisoned and detained indefinitely in Russia. But she called America trash. She made some comments, and I believe you offered her a first-class ticket to any totalitarian regime that she wants to visit. So that's very generous.
Not only her, like some of my teammates, I remember I was in a locker room and having a conversation with some of my teammates, and they were like, oh my God, America is so bad, America is trash, and blah, blah. I was like, guys, listen, the season is about to be over. And when the season over, I will buy your ticket. It's a first class, don't worry. And we go to some of these countries out there like China, like Russia, like Iran, like North Korea, like Venezuela, like Cuba, like Turkey, right? And forget about calling them trash. Please, I would like to see you criticize them. You and your family member will be in jail and tortured to death. You know, so sometimes people don't understand because they don't travel enough. So sometimes they don't understand that, how good we have it in this country.
Yeah, absolutely. And you mentioned, I believe, 29 countries out of the vast majority you can't go to because of the threats. And I believe that the FBI at one point even gave you a panic button when you were traveling around for the NBA. Is this something that you think about on a daily basis? Do you ever get rattled, or does this motivate you?
I mean, it does motivate me first, because that shows that how much they actually scared of me, But the second thing is, it does feel a little weird to live with a panic button next to your bed, or knowing that you have a bounty on your head and you could get killed in any day and stuff. And every place you have to go, you have to get in touch with the FBI and stuff. So it is a different kind of style of life. But hey, it is what it is. I'm trying to get used to it.
Yeah. If nothing else from this conversation with Mr. Freedom, take a moment to appreciate that right now we can all take out our phone, go on the internet, and say some equivalent of Joe Biden is senile, or Trump's a big fat liar, and we won't have a bounty over our head. Exactly. I mean, it's the little things. It's the freedom of speech that matters. So to shift gears a little bit, we talked about Turkey and your opposition there, and the consequences that you faced from that government. The NBA supported you throughout all of that. They had your back, is my understanding. But then you started talking about a different authoritarian regime. It was about 2019 when there were protests in Hong Kong. And some would say, I'm not saying it, but some people would say the greatest player of all time, LeBron James, started saying, stop talking about Hong Kong. You don't know what you're talking about. And you went up there and you said, no, I think that we should stand up for freedom over there and call out the human rights abuses in China. What happened then?
Yeah, so it all actually started with a basketball camp. So I'm in New York doing a basketball camp with kids. I remember after the basketball camp, all the kids lined up and taking a picture with me and one-on-one and stuff. I remember I took a picture with this kid, and his parent called me out in front of everybody and said, how can you call yourself a human rights activist when your Muslim brothers and sisters are getting tortured and raped every day in concentration camp in China? I'm still smiling for the camera. I turned around to that parent. I was like, I promise I'm going to get back to you. So I went back to my hotel. I started to study about what's going on. And obviously on the internet, you can find all kind of news. You don't know which one you can trust or not. So I called my manager. I was like, I need you to find me a concentration camp survivor. So he found me one. It was a lady, and we sit down. We had a 1 hour conversation, and she was telling me about all the torture methods and all the forced sterilization and abortioning, gang raping and stuff, And I was like, you got me. I'm going to do whatever I can in my power to help you. What can I do for you? She said, nothing. I was like, what do you mean nothing? I was like, so we just had this 1 hour conversation for no reason? She said, no. She said, I live in America. I live a good life here. I can do whatever I want. I can say whatever I want. I have a freedom. Help those 2-3 million Uyghurs who are in concentration camp getting tortured and raped every day. So at that moment, I was like, you know what? I don't care what it takes. I'm going to stand up for these innocent people. So I wanted to do it in a very unique way, because I remember when I was a kid, whenever I watched an NBA game, the first thing I was watching was the shoes. I mean, what color they are, what brand it is, if they're comfortable. And the next day I was telling my dad, please buy those shoes for me. I mean, everybody here loves shoes, right? You cannot show me one person here that doesn't love shoes. So I came up with this idea. I was like, let's reach out to these artists around the world and who's been oppressed by their government, and let's put all the struggles, all the pain, whatever they've been through on non-slave labor shoes, and we're gonna go out there and play basketball. And there was no rule against it, because 3 years ago, 2020, when they took us in an NBA bubble, it was during the protests. All the players were putting on their shoes, Black Lives Matter, Black Revolution, George Floyd, Breonna Taylor. I was like, fine, there's no rule against it. So my first topic was Free Tibet, right? It's a human rights issue, Free Tibet. So I created the shoes. I went out there. I was playing for the Celtics. Our first game was against New York Knicks, opening night, our biggest rivalry, at Madison Square Garden. So I put the shoes on. I went out there and started warming up. And 1 minute before the game started, two gentlemen from the Celtics, they were for the NBA, came to me and said, take your shoes off. I was like, excuse me? They said, you gotta take your shoes off because your shoes has been getting so much attention internationally. Obviously, it was from China. They said, you gotta take them off. You know, it was the perfect moment for me because I was just getting ready for my citizenship test. Every day I was studying. So I closed my eyes. I was like, okay, there are 27 amendments. My first amendment, freedom of speech. I turned around and said, no, I'm not taking them off. So they're like, what do you mean? I was like, I don't care even if I get fined. I'm not taking them off. They said, we're not talking about getting fined. We're talking about getting banned. So they were literally threatening me to get banned. Anyway, I played 0 minutes first half. I went back to my locker room. I looked at my phone. There was thousands of notifications. I clicked on the one that my manager sent me. He said, every Boston Celtics game is banned in China. It took them 24 minutes to ban every game in television. Think about it. First quarter, 12 minutes. Second quarter, 12 minutes. Anyway, the game ended. I played 0 minutes, which I played every game before that. I played 0 minutes, and obviously we lost the game. We did lost the game very, very bad. Anyway, so after the game, I told my manager there was a media storm. We literally were getting media from all over the world. I was like, I don't want to do no media. I don't want because I didn't want my teammate to think that I'm doing that for attention. So after the game, NBPA called me, the Player Association, which I give thousands of dollars every year to protect my rights against the NBA. They said, listen, NBA has been pressuring us. You can never wear those shoes ever again. I talk about the problems that are happening in Turkey for the last 10 years. All I got was support. I talk about the problems that are happening in China. My phone was ringing once every hour. They were telling me you cannot wear those shoes ever again. So they pressured me so much, I was like, you know what? I promise I'm not going to wear free Tibet shoes ever again. They said, promise? I said, promise. We hung up the phone. So the next game, I wore free Uyghur shoes. So they called me after the game, right? They called me after the game. They said, you're a liar. You lied to us. I was like, hold on a second. First of all, I never lied to you. I never said I'm not going to wear free Uyghur shoes. I just said I'm just not going to wear free Tibet shoes. So at that moment, they understand that they're not going to be able to make me apologize from the Chinese government or to make me my tweet down and just say, sorry, I didn't mean, blah, blah, whatever. So after the third game, one of my teammates walked up to me and said, you know, this is your last year in NBA, right? You criticize China, you criticize Nike, especially Nike, because Nike, I don't know if you guys wearing Nikes, and if you are, just take them off and throw it away.
The trash is right over there.
Trash is right over there. Because look at this hypocrisy. Nike, the biggest sponsor of the NBA, they stand with Black Lives Matter in this country. They stand with LGBTQ community. They stand with no Asian hate. They stand with Latino community. But everybody knows about the sweatshops and, slave laborers. So I was like, you know what? You guys are hypocrites. I'm going to expose you too. So my teammate said, if you criticize Nike, if you criticize China, you will be done playing basketball. Have fun, smile. I hope we win a championship, but you're never going to get a contract ever again. I was like, sure. February came, and I got released. Released means blackballed. Released means fired. And since then, it was over. It's been almost 2 years now. The saddest thing was, I played 11 years in NBA. I had hundreds of teammates, hundreds of coaches, so many people from the NBA office. Not one of them texted me. Not one of them called me and said, hey man, good luck with whatever you're coming to your way next. Good luck with this, because they did not want me to mention their name. Because if I ever do in an interview, all their contract, all their endorsement deals, jersey sales will be canceled. When I did the whole China thing was a perfect moment, because I did it right before the Beijing Olympics. People call it the genocide games. I forget about the NBA. I try to reach out to everybody. NFL, MLB, MLS, NHL, WWE. I even tried to reach out to Olympians. I was like, do not become part of the propaganda. They all said the same thing. They said, listen, man, I think what you're doing is so amazing, so inspirational. Keep doing what you're doing. We love you, we support you, but we just cannot do it out loud. I said, why? They said, well, we have shoe deals, endorsement deals. We want to get another contract. I asked them one simple question. I was like, put yourself in their shoes. If your mother, if your sister, if your daughter was in those concentration camps getting tortured and raped every day, would you still pick money and business over your morals, values, and principles? They usually turn around and leave the room, literally. So, since then, I don't consider myself a retired player because I have not retired yet. I still work out and stuff. But yeah, that's what happened.
And the commissioner, Adam Silver, right, he's gone on the record and said some version of, oh, well, you're not in the NBA, not because of anything you said, nothing to do with that. I'm going to bore you with some numbers really quick. There's been about 5,000 people who have ever played a game in the NBA. Only about 40 of them have ever had multiple games where they've scored 20 points and secured 20 rebounds in any game, which is an incredibly impressive feat. This guy's one of those people. He's done it at least 10 times, right? He's not in the NBA, not because he can't play. He's in the NBA because they're choosing profits over people, and they're not backing down from China. So I'm sorry they're wimps, man. I'm sorry they're not backing down.
I know, man. It's heartbreaking.
Yeah. So I want to talk a little bit more about, this country, and congratulations again on your citizenship and being a part of it. Several folks... You got a home here if you don't have a home in the NBA, I'll tell you that. Several folks have asked you, and you've deferred every time. You say you're not sure yet, but they've said, hey, are you going to run for office? We need your voice. Do you have an answer to that question today for this crowd?
Okay, so first of all, I want to say I remember I was a green card holder, and I did this interview and said, hey, in 5 years, I'm going to become an American citizen. I'm so excited. And the host said, you don't have to wait 5 years. If you marry with an American woman, it's only 3 years. I was like, oh, I didn't know. The next day, I was getting so much DMs from all over America. It was people were sending me wild pictures. Anyway, I don't want to talk about those. But America has been so good to me because I remember people keep talking about me losing my career in NBA, but I stand up for the things that happened in Turkey. I lost my family. So comparing to losing my career, that's literally like nothing, But America has been so good to me, and I just cannot thank every American that ever lived in this country because, from day one, they opened their arm, they gave me a warm welcome, and now every Thanksgiving, every Christmas, I get so many DMs and say, hey man, we are your family now. You can come to our house. You can celebrate the Thanksgiving with us. You can celebrate Christmas with us. And I have been going to some of my friends' house to learn about Christmas, to learn about Thanksgiving, to learn about July 4th, because Independence Day, to me, I remember my first year, my first few years in America, all I thought was it was just amazing barbecue and just fireworks, Then you learn about what that day really means to every Americans out there. So every time now I go to the Hill to talk about all the human rights violations and stuff, people are from both parties actually say, hey man, what are you doing? Stop wasting your time. Just bring your voice to the Congress, to the Senate, and just go out there and just to talk about what's more important. So yes, when the time is right, I am thinking about running. I hope I get your support.
You got about 1,000 donors in the room.
I love it. No, I love it. No, because we need strong voices who actually loves America and tell people that, not taking your freedom for granted and how blessed and lucky to be in a country like this. So
awesome. We're running out of time. I could ask you a million more questions. Okay. I'll ask you two at once.
All right.
First is, what advice would you have to young people? The second is, would you do anything that you've done in terms of your activism differently? Do you have any regrets in standing up for what you believe in?
I think my one advice to young people out there is people need to understand, we need to leave our differences on the table and try to find what we have in common, because we only have one America and we only have one world. So we need to make this world better together. Till one of those crazy billionaires find another planet to live, this world is what we have. So we need to make this country, we need to make this world better together. And that's the amazing thing about America. You can be Jewish, you can be Muslim, you can be Christian, you can be Mormon, you can be whoever you are. You can be white, black, Democrat, Republican, whoever you are, you can peacefully live in this country. So my one advice to all these young kids out there is just not take your freedom for granted and just smile.
Awesome.
Yeah.
In terms of your activism, thinking back, you
any
sacrificed so
regrets?
much.
Good question. Any regrets? I had a conversation with my manager, and I was like, well, he said, you could have played another 6 years in the league, and that's with endorsement deals and contracts, that's close to $50 to $60 million. And you lost your career now. You lost your family now. What are you doing? I was like, you know what? Someone had to do it. Forget about the NBA. Literally, you look at Hollywood, you look at big tech, you look at academias, you look at farmland, some of the Congress and local Congresses. I started to ask that question to myself. We keep talking about our freedom in this country, but literally, many of it is pretty much run by the biggest dictatorship in the world, China. I'm asking this question to you guys. How can the biggest dictatorship in the world can control a 100% American-made company like NBA, like Hollywood, and fire a U.S. citizen? That's just very interesting. That's just very bizarre. So we should not take our freedom for granted, and we have to stand strong for it.
I agree. And Enes, thank you so much for being here, for fighting your fight, for having courage to speak up. This guy's going to be speaking all day tomorrow in breakout sessions, so you haven't seen the end of him.
I want to say I appreciate you all, man. Definitely means a lot. Every time I see a crowd like this, every time I see freedom lovers or like you guys, it gives me so much hope and motivation to fight. So I really appreciate that, guys. Thank you.
Thank you for being here. Final round of applause for Enes.
Good?
Man.
There you go, man.
Good. Yeah. I think we got this one.
God, I have popcorn juice all over my script. See, wasn't that incredible? You got to see Enes Freedom. The man who loves freedom so much, he changed his name to Freedom. He and Themea were a great duo. So let's hear it again for them, because that was amazing. Those are the kind of discussions that we need to have. So I told you we had some presidential candidates in the House, and right now, here's someone who's really taken the race by storm. One of the most interesting people, but also arguably the hardest working presidential candidate I have seen in the years that I have been covering presidential politics. And I was on the 96 Hours to Victory tour with Bob Dole in 1996. And that man did not sleep. And when I say 96 hours, it was 4 days straight, stop after stop after stop. And he was tireless. But Vivek has one of the most amazing presidential strategies of any candidate in the race, because, and I don't know if you saw the viral video of the woman who was screaming at him at an event he was holding, but they were trying to kick her out. Security was trying to kick her out of the building. And he was like, no, stop. I want to hear what she has to say. And he said, if we're going to talk about free speech and if we're going to honor free speech, I don't have to agree with you. I may not agree with you on much, but I want to hear your story. And the woman was in tears, and she talked to him. And that's what he's doing. He's talking to people, and even people who've never been interested in politics. And I told him this on Fox not long ago, that my uncle, who has never donated to a political campaign ever in his 75 years on this planet, said that he is strongly considering making a donation to Vivek's presidential campaign because He listens. He's so smart. He started Strive Asset Management in the great state of Ohio. He is a best-selling author, Woke Inc. and Nation of Victims, two of his books, which he's a great writer. That'll give you a foundation for his message. But who the hell am I to talk about it? Let's welcome him to the stage, Vivek Ramaswamy.
Taking care of business every day. Taking care of business and working every day. Come on.
It's good to be here at FreedomFest, guys. Love being here with my freedom-loving Americans. This is great. Well, I know many of you, but many of you are seeing me for the first time, so I'll tell you a word about myself. First thing people ask me is, how the heck do I pronounce your name? It's Vivek. It rhymes with cake. I found that most people like cake, so we've gone with that one. I'll tell you, my parents came to this country a little over 40 years ago with almost no money. I've gone on to found multi-billion-dollar companies, from Roivant, the biotech company that I built that developed life-saving medicines, to Strive, which competes against BlackRock today. And I did it while marrying my wife, who's a surgeon. We brought 2 sons into this world. We follow our faith. That's the American dream. And I'm running for president because I am worried that that American dream will not exist for the next generation of Americans unless we step up and do something to preserve it. We're in the middle today of a national identity crisis. Faith, patriotism, hard work, family. These things have disappeared, only to be replaced by new secular religions in America. Wokeism, gender ideology, climatism, COVIDism, depression, anxiety, drug usage, suicide. These are symptoms of a deeper void of purpose and meaning in our country. And I'll tell you this as a member of my generation. I'm a millennial. I'm the first millennial ever to run for U.S. president as a Republican. Thank you. I appreciate that. I'll tell you something about us millennials. I think it's true of all of us. It's definitely true of people my age and younger in this country. We are hungry for a cause. We are hungry for purpose and meaning and identity at a time in our national history when the things that used to fill that void, belief in country, hard work, family, these things have disappeared. That leaves a black hole of a vacuum in its wake. And when you have a black hole that runs that deep, that is when the poison fills the void. That's what's going on in America today. And what I see in the Republican Party, it's what I'm running in as Republican candidate for president, is a movement that has been pretty good at pointing out the problem one at a time. We've always been running from something. But I think that now is our moment to level up and to start running to something, to our vision of what it means to be an American today. That is the question that we ought to answer. Yeah, somebody my age, that question, what does it mean to be an American? You get a blank stare in response. It's like a deer in the headlights moment. That is the question for us now, what it means to be an American today. To me, it means we believe in the ideals that set this nation into motion 250 years ago. Ideals like meritocracy and the pursuit of excellence, that you get ahead in this country, not on the color of your skin, but on the content of your character and your contributions. That is why we should end race-based affirmative action in every sphere of American life. It means we believe, yes, in the rule of law, that if you're like my parents, you do get to come to this country legally through the front door. They followed the rules, they paid their taxes, they did their part. But it also means that your first act of entering this country cannot break the law, because that is what it means to be a nation founded on the rule of law. Means we believe in free speech and open debate, that we don't have a government in this country that uses technology companies to do through the back door what government could not silence through the front door under the Constitution. We believe in free speech. That is what makes us American. It means we believe the people who we elect to run the government, Democrat, Republican, I don't care. The people who we elect to run the government ought to be the ones who at least actually run the government. Not this managerial bureaucracy that actually runs the show today. That's why I've said, if you put me in that White House as your president and I cannot collect a paycheck from you all, the taxpayers, for more than 8 years, which I think is a good thing, then neither should any of those federal bureaucrats either. 8-year term limits for the bureaucracy instead of those civil service protections. That's how we drive change. And if there's a government agency that should not exist, I will not make the false promise of telling you that I'll reform that agency. That is a lie. That administrative state, it cannot be reformed. But when an agency should not exist, from the U.S. Department of Education to the FBI, to the IRS, to the ATF, I will not just pledge to reform that agency. We will go in and shut it down. That is how we restore 3 branches of government, not 4 in this country. See, these are not Republican ideas or Democrat ideas. These are not black ideas or white ideas. These are fundamentally American ideals that we fought a revolution in 1776 to secure. That is what it means to be an American. We believe in those 1776 ideals. Let me tell you what's happened in our country today. The best measure of the health of our American civic fabric, American democracy, is the percentage of people who feel free to say what they actually think in public. Right now, we are doing poorly on that metric. We got to close that gap by more of us starting to have the courage to actually speak the truth in the open again. That is what this campaign is about. We're about speaking the truth without apology. That is what we do as Americans. I go around, we will speak the truth. I will share with you my true beliefs. God is real. There are 2 genders. Fossil fuels are a requirement for human prosperity. Reverse racism is racism. An open border is not a border. Parents determine the education of their children. The nuclear family is the best known form of governance to mankind. Capitalism is the best system known to man to lift people up from poverty. There are 3 branches of government in this country, not 4. And the U.S. Constitution is the strongest guarantor of freedom in human history. That is the truth. We stand up for the truth. We do not back down from the truth. That is what won us the American Revolution. That is what will win us the revolution of 2024. I'll tell you, I don't think about even winning the election. That's just a milestone along the way. I think about what I want to be telling you all in January of 2033 when I leave that office. My kids will be not even in high school yet, okay? So we'll be moving on to a new phase of life by then. I don't believe in false promises. There's a lot that the president needs to rely on hundreds of people in Congress to be able to do. This is the stuff of false promises. But there's a few things that I can tell you that I know as President of the United States I'll be able to get done. The first of those is in January of 2033. We will once again in this country have 3 co-equal branches of government rather than an unconstitutional 4th branch of government. We will have reduced the federal employee headcount by over 75% so that once again the people we elect to run the government will be the ones who actually run the government. I will tell you in January 2033 that we are no longer dependent on our enemy, Communist China, for the way that we actually live our lives. The shoes on our feet to the phones in our pockets, we will not be dependent on an adversary for the way we actually live in this country. That's what it means to say that if you're the CCP, you will not deputize our companies, or for that matter, the NBA, as we just heard from Enes, to be able to advance your political agendas in this country. That is what it means to be sovereign as the United States of America. We'll be growing at 4+% GDP growth again in this country. It's almost as though we've forgotten that economic growth is itself our best way forward. How do we get there? We drill, we frack, we burn coal, we embrace nuclear energy. We stop paying people to stay at home instead of actually getting people back to work. We reform the U.S. Federal Reserve, restoring the stability of the dollar as the sole mandate for the U.S. Fed. We shut down most of the regulations that shackle businesses across this country. That's how we revive economic growth. And what I've found in this country, growing up here for the last 37 years, is that we tend to be more proud of our country when we're making more money in that country. And it will be my job as the young guy in this race and who leads this country to make sure that the next generation of Americans is actually once again proud to be American. That is something we have missed for a long time to come, but we can give that to our next generation. I tell you, I grew up into a generation where we were taught to celebrate our diversity and our differences. So much that we forgot all of the ways we are really just the same as Americans, bound by a common set of ideals that set this nation into motion 250 years ago. I believe it deep in my bones that those ideals still exist. I believe it that we together can actually work together to revive them. Yes, we are going through hard times in this country. But I'll tell you the same thing that I tell to college campuses as I travel this country. Those are left-leaning audiences. This audience may lean a different way, but the message is the same. Our hardship is not a choice. Hardship is something that happens to us in life. But victimhood is a choice. And hardship is not the same thing as victimhood. We don't choose victimhood, we choose the other thing. That is what makes us American. E pluribus unum, we say for a reason. It means from many, one. That is what won us the American Revolution. That is what reunited us after the Civil War. That is what won us 2 world wars and the Cold War. That is what still gives hope to the free world. And if we can revive that dream over group identity and victimhood and grievance, then nobody in the world, not a nation, not a corporation, not a virus is going to defeat us. That is what American exceptionalism is all about. And that is what we together will revive to save this great nation. Thank you all. Love being here at FreedomFest. God bless you. God bless your families. God bless our United States. Thank you, guys. Thank you. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Did you love it? Did you love Vivek? Were you electrified? This is only day one. This is only our first session. We have so much more to go. And I've got several announcements in just a little bit. You guys are all staying, right? You're just finding your seats? That's awesome. I'm so happy to see you. You guys just got here and you're eager. And you all, anyone who leaves right now has to give me $5. Did you guys not hear the rule? Okay. So our next speaker bestowed upon me my PhD in pop culture. It may not be from an accredited university, but it is from one of the few people in Illinois who is keeping corruption in check. He really is doing the Lord's work in a state that is overrun by unions and incredibly corrupt. The Illinois Policy Institute, you better thank God for them, because they are doing some phenomenal work, and they even hosted my book party there in Chicago, which was awesome before Chicago was super dangerous. He's like the anti-Lori Lightfoot. He is the chairman of the Illinois Policy Institute, and if you're good listeners, then he will give each of you your own special PhD. Let's hear it for John Tillman. Woo!
Ain't no sunshine when he's gone. Not warm when he's away.
Don't stop. That was good. How's everybody doing? How many people were on Beale Street last night, or maybe mid-afternoon, drinking when you shouldn't have been? A raise of hands. I might see you there. I love years ago, and to say that Kennedy shocks and awes, the shoes alone don't really begin to tell the full story. I think you've had a those of you who know me primarily from the Illinois Policy Institute, Iron Light Labs. Iron Light Labs, by the way, having Fest this year in Memphis. I personally love Memphis. And I'm particularly excited about tonight's session that we're about to do on my left. But the biggest reason I think this conversation to stay the freest country in the world, what brings us together as individuals, work together for common purpose. And there's too much these days. The truth is that at our core, Americans want to get along with each other, black, white, or brown, gay or straight, suburban. We all get along in our daily lives. Still needs to be mended, and there's a lot of problems in this pluralist in terms of how we see one another, how we treat one. I certainly have part of the reason I wanted to do this comes to race and race relations, and it's always a very scary time. Heard the wrong. A few years later, though, I became a college student at Wayne State University in Midtown Detroit, Michigan. I lived just off campus where I was demographically the minority. So I got to have a whole new experience. I rode a bus from the Cass Avenue corridor out to Southfield, Michigan for a job every day while going to school. And I was the only white guy on that bus. I had a lot of interesting conversations, and I learned a lot. It was exhilarating and thrilling and illuminating about how life really is and what brings people together and what keeps them apart. And the office I worked in was a call center out in Southfield, and about 40% of the people in that call center were African American, about 60% were white. What brought them all together in that call center was that they were mostly working class people struggling during the Great Recession in 1982 and 83 in Detroit. A year or so later, I took over a branch office in Washington, D.C. Again, the ratio was about the same, 40% black, 60% white. The difference, though, was that everybody in the Washington office had a bachelor's degree or higher. Most people, in fact, had graduate degrees. A professional class of people, all again working in a call center. In Detroit to try to make ends meet. In Washington to try to pay for a very expensive city as they work their way up the corporate or government ladder. So I had all these amazing experiences, and then I went to Chicago and took over an office there with 80 employees, 60 white, 20 black. And I thought this was very strange because the office was located right on the border of Chicago. But I came to find out that racism did exist because my predecessor purposely avoided hiring people from the west side and south side of Chicago because he was a bigot. He did not believe that African Americans from the city could sell to white America all across the country. Because of these experiences I had, I knew that was a lie and untrue. And within 2 years, we had 300 people working in that office. About 250 of them were African American and about 50 of them were white. It was an unbelievable thrill ride. And in terms of the company, they were a little confused. They couldn't figure out what was going on in our Chicago office and how we were growing so quickly. And what I did and what our team did was just treat people with courtesy and respect that everybody wants opportunity. But I did learn that not everybody in the home office of that company liked it. It made them a little nervous. They were uncomfortable. So all these experiences taught me that racism does exist then and still does today, and differences exist. But the way to bridge those differences is through conversations. And that's why I am really thrilled to be sitting here with Daryl Davis. He's made it his life's work to break down barriers that do keep people separated. And usually people often who you would imagine never want to ever talk to each other. Daryl is a race relations expert. He's received acclaim for his book. I love the name, Clandestine Relationships. That's Clan, K-L-A-N, as you will hear shortly. He also made a documentary film called Accidental Courtesy. My favorite part about Daryl's bio, though, is this, because I think anybody that has this sentence in their bio is super cool, and Daryl is. He's an international recording artist, actor, and leader of the Daryl Davis Band. I dream of having a band with my name in it, Daryl. And he's done film and television work as well. Many of you may have seen Daryl in the famous HBO show, The Wire. Daryl, I'm thrilled you're here. What's going to happen is Daryl's going to roam the stage and talk for about 20 minutes. When he's done with that, he's going to come and sit down, and we're going to pretend we have a little fire pit here and some marshmallows, and we're going to have a further chat to finish it off. Daryl, the stage is yours.
Thank you, John. Thank you all for being here. So, I want to tell you a little bit about myself real quick before I get into this. I'm a professional musician. I've played in all 50 states. I have been to 62 countries around the world on 6 continents. What does that mean? Other than the fact that I have a lot of frequent flyer miles and hotel points. It means, folks, that I have been exposed to a wide variety of skin colors, ethnicities, religions, cultures, belief systems, etc. And all of that has shaped who I have become. And I can tell you something. The greatest weapon known to man to mitigate or even eradicate contention is the least expensive weapon that we have. And yet it's free. And yet it remains the most underused tool. It's called conversation. When two enemies are talking, they're not fighting, they're talking. It's when the conversation ceases that the ground becomes fertile for violence. So you want to keep the conversation going. Now, what did I learn from all this travel? I'll tell you exactly what I learned. I've learned that no matter how far I go from our country, the United States, or even Memphis, Tennessee, whether it's right next door to Canada, or right next door to Mexico, or halfway around the globe, no matter how different the people may be that I encounter, perhaps they don't look like I do, they don't speak my language or worship as I do, I always conclude one thing, that we all are human beings. And as such, every human being, no matter how close, how far away, want these 5 core values in their lives. Everyone wants to be loved. Everyone wants to be respected. We all want to be heard. We want to be treated fairly and truthfully. And we want the same things for our family as anybody else wants for their family. And if we can learn to apply those 5 core values, or any of those 5 values, when we find ourselves in an adversarial situation, or in a society or culture in which we're unfamiliar or uncomfortable, I will guarantee you that your navigation of that society, that situation, that culture will be much more smooth and much more positive. And I'm going to give you an example. I'm going to use extreme communication to show you how powerful communication is. So what do I spend my time doing in between gigs? Well, here's one example. I've been doing this now for 41 years. Here's an example from 30 years ago. That's in Maryland at a KKK rally. I went and talked to these people. This is almost 8 years ago in Missouri. There were more Klan people there. When the rally is over, they all go to the picnic table and get food and beverages, etc. They always leave some Klansmen there to watch the cross because it's going to topple over, and they don't want anything to get sparks to catch anything on fire. So they stand there and guard the cross and put out the fire when it falls down. What do I do at these Klan rallies? Like I said, I engage in conversation. I am a firm believer that a missed opportunity for dialogue is a missed opportunity for conflict resolution. So I'm going to show you a quick snapshot of a rally that I was at. CNN asked me if they could do a story on me. I said, sure. So they wanted to know when was the next time I was going to a rally. I said, well, I'll call you next time. So I did, and I called them. They followed me 2 hours up to this rally, and they said to me, do you think the leader, the Imperial Wizard there, will talk to us? I said, I'll do better than that. When the rally is over, I'll speak to Mr. Kelly, and I'll get him to come back to my house, and you can interview the head of the Ku Klux Klan inside a black man's house. They're like, whoa, okay. So they filmed the rally. When the thing was over, I spoke with him, and he came back to my house and sat down and talked with me, and CNN. I'm going to show you just a quick clip of that rally from CNN. Listen to what Mr. Kelly has to say.
Davis is one of the few African Americans you will ever find attending a KKK rally. More than attending, he is welcome.
I got more respect for that black man than I do you white niggers out there.
As friendship transcended the color barrier. Listen to Kelly at a Klan rally.
I'm a far-right man to hell, man, because I believe in what he stands for and he believes in what I stand for. A lot of times we don't agree with everything, but at least he respects me to sit down and listen to me. And I'll respect him to sit down and listen to him.
The strange relationship of a KKK wizard and his black buddy. In Washington, I'm Carl Rochelle, CNN Sunday Morning.
Okay, you heard the Klan leader say that he respected me. What's that all about? I'm a black guy. He's in the Klan. But he named three of those 5 core values that I gave you. I told you everybody wants to be loved. They want to be respected. They want to be heard. They want to be treated fairly and truthfully. And they want the same things for their family as we want for ours. I would see him many times. I would invite him down to my house to interview him, talk with him, get to know him, and I always applied those values. He said, we may not agree on everything, but at least he respects me to sit down and listen to me, and I respect him to sit down and listen to him. Those were his words. If you don't take anything else home with you tonight, take those words home and apply them when you find yourself in a adversarial situation. In fact, let's take race off the table for a second. Like I said, I'm going to use extreme examples, right? How much more extreme can you get than a black man and a Klansman, all right? So let's take race off the table. There are a lot of hot topics out here. Abortion, nuclear weapons, global warming, the last presidential election, the upcoming presidential election, the war between Russia and Ukraine, or the war in the Middle East. These are all hot topic buttons, right? You're on one side, somebody else is on the other side. Apply those values, and that way you can have a civil conversation and learn about why that person believes the way they do, and they can learn about why you believe the way you do, and one of y'all just might change your mind. So he named 3 of those values. He said that I respected him. That's one. Now understand something. I'm not a racist. I'm not a separatist, a supremacist, a nationalist, I'm none of those things. I did not respect what Mr. Kelly had to say. I'm going to say that again to be clear with you. I did not respect what Mr. Kelly had to say. I respected his right to say it. You understand the difference, right? Okay, and that's what FreedomFest is all about. You guys here are in the world's largest forum for free speech. Everybody is here, from lay people to experts, from A to Z and everything in between. Get to know these people. Get to know the ones that you disagree with and apply these values. He said I respected him. He said that I listened to him. That's number two, that I allowed him to be heard, right? And he said because I respected and listened to him, he sat down and respected and listened to me. Those are his words. We may not agree on everything, but at least he respects me to sit down and listen to me, and I respect him to sit down and listen to him. He named three values: respect, being heard or listened to, and the fact that he reciprocated it. That's fairness. Because I applied those 5 core values, not overnight, but over time, Roger Kelly began thinking about the things that I would talk with him, that I would share with him about. I did not attack him for his beliefs, even though I did not support his beliefs. I listened to him, and in turn, he listened to me. That's treating each other fairly. Over time, he began rethinking, and he decided he needed to leave the Ku Klux Klan and drop that ideology behind, okay? Because of that conversation. And when Roger Kelly left the Ku Klux Klan, he gave me his robe and hood. You laugh, but it's the same robe and hood that you saw in the video there. Okay? That, folks, is the result of conversation, not yelling and screaming and beating each other to a pulp. That's the power of conversation. And of course, we have here what's called the hood. This is the hood, this is the mask. Members who want anonymity, they look at you don't know who they are, they peep at you through these eyelets. The mask is attached to the hood via 3 snaps and or Velcro. If they don't care that they're identified, they simply detach the mask and the face is exposed under the hood. And you saw both types in that videotape. As I said, I have been doing this now for 41 years. I've got tons of robes and hoods by active members who have left the Klan because of our conversations. Some of them come out with me and stand on stage renouncing their organization and trying to de-radicalize people who are still involved or prevent young people from going down the wrong path. So that's the power of conversation. Now, I deal with all types. Klan, neo-Nazi, you name it, I've got it. I've got tons of these flags and other things like this. So now I just gave you a snapshot of what I do. Now let me just walk you through it, step by step real quick if I may. Let me just back this up a second. There, what's going on here? This is 6 years ago in Charlottesville, Virginia. Y'all remember what happened there? The big white supremacist rally. I know all those guys who put it on. Some of them have even been in my home, and I've been in some of their homes. Nasty bunch of people. This is that day, August 12th, 2017, one of the many scenes. Somebody threw an aerosol can at this black gentleman. These guys, he picked up the aerosol can, lit a match, and sprayed it, and now he has an improvised flamethrower. These guys coming down the steps are Klansmen. You don't know that because you don't see them in their robes and hoods. I know that because I know every one of those guys. The guy in the front with the white t-shirt and the camouflage pants is the Grand Dragon for Virginia, meaning state leader for Virginia, all right? And they're trying to beat him with their Confederate battle flagpoles. He's trying to set them on fire. The Imperial Wizard, which means national leader, you don't see him in this shot. He's already come down about 12 or so paces ahead of them. So he's over here, out of the shot, walking this way. And he came down the steps. That's from a Confederate statue park. They're trying to preserve the Robert E. Lee statue or something. So the Imperial Wizard is over here. He came down while the guy was making the flamethrower. He turns around and he sees exactly what you all are looking at. He sees this guy trying to set his people on fire and so forth and so on. He pulls out a gun, a handgun, and points it at the head of this black man and shouts, "Hey, nigger." And then he lowers the gun and fires it, and the bullet goes into the gravel right here. Law enforcement had to dig it out. And then the Imperial Wizard turns and continues walking in the direction in which he was headed, right past the Charlottesville police, who are standing there like this with their green neon vests on, watching the whole thing go down. And not one of them moved. And for that reason and many other reasons that day, the mayor of Charlottesville fired the Charlottesville police chief, and rightfully so. So now Charlottesville has a new police chief. So the Imperial Wizard, I'm going to set it up for you. He's wearing a black bandana, a blue jean vest, and black jeans. So you're going to see him come down the steps. You'll see a puff of mist in the air. He ducks under it and comes this way. So let's take a look. Up there in the green neon vest.
That's a gunshot.
Okay. One of the many scenes in Charlottesville that day. What would you do if that came to your town, wherever you're from? You can't say, "Oh, no, that doesn't happen in my town of Los Angeles, California, or Memphis. That's way over there in Charlottesville, those East Coast people." No, let me tell you something. Anywhere there's hate, that can happen. That can happen. And let me tell you something else. Charlottesville, I don't care where you live, Charlottesville is your city. Because if you are an American, this is your country. And therefore, every city, every American city is one of your cities. So whatever problems Charlottesville has are your problems. Okay, when New York got their trade centers taken down on 9/11, and you live out on the West Coast, that's still your problem, because New York is one of your cities if you're an American. All right? So what would you do? Well, here is the Imperial Wizard. You saw him in his street clothes. Here he is in his traditional Klan attire. You want to play the blame game? Okay, let's play the blame game for a second. Let's blame the black guy for trying to set people on fire. Okay, he gets some blame. Shouldn't have been doing that. Let's blame those Klansmen trying to beat somebody with their battle flag poles. They should not have been doing that. They get some blame. Let's blame him for pulling out a gun and firing it. Let's blame the Charlottesville police for not doing their job for what we pay them to do, to serve and protect. They were serving and protecting nobody that day. So yes, they definitely get some blame. But maybe we should blame ourselves for allowing our country to come to this point in the 21st century. This does not belong in any century, let alone the 21st. But you know, sitting around blaming people does nothing. I blame her, she blames me, we blame him. It goes around and nothing gets done. Our country, our society, can only become one of two things. One, it can become that which we sit back and watch it become, or two, it can become that which we stand up and make it become. Only you can answer this question. Do you want to sit back and see what your country becomes, or do you want to stand up and make it become what you want to see? I know my answer. I chose the latter. I want to stand up and make it become what I want to see. So what did I do? I called that guy up. I said, "Hey man, you and I need to get together and talk. Not Klansman to black man, but man to man." I said, your Confederate history is just as much a part of my history as my black history is a part of yours. It's all American history. You and I need to get together and explore American history together. I talked to him for about 20 minutes on the phone. He finally agreed, gave me his address. I drove an hour and a half, unarmed, by myself, to his house. I sat in his living room, KKK stuff all over the walls, portraits of Nathan Bedford Forrest, the first Grand Wizard of the KKK, and all kinds of Confederate battle flags. I sat on his couch that was covered with a Confederate battle flag blanket. right? And I listened to him and his Klan's lady fiance give me a 2-hour lecture on American history from a Confederate perspective, of course. Now, some things he got right, some things he got wrong. I didn't interrupt him. Why? Because people want to be heard. I just sat back there and listened, right? But when he was done, now it's my turn. The first thing I did was I corrected him on the things that he got wrong. I know my history. But I also commended him on the things that he got right. But rather than sit there and give them a 2-hour lecture on American history from the other perspective, I had a better idea. A new museum had just opened up in Washington, D.C., called the Smithsonian National Museum of African American History and Culture. It had just opened up. It was free, but very hard to get into because the lines were all over the place. You had to have tickets, but there were free tickets. So I had a connection there. I said, listen, rather than me sit here and go through 2 hours, I have a better idea. Let's set a date. I'll get some tickets. You guys come down to my house. I'll drive you into Washington, D.C., and we will go explore that museum together. They said, okay. Why? Because I showed him that respect of sitting there and listening to him, and now he's going to be fair and show me the same back. So I got the tickets. We set the date. He and his fiance came down to my house. We hung out in my living room, put them in my car, drove them down to D.C. to this museum. Here we are, the Klan's lady, her fiance, this guy here, and myself walking into the world's largest Black History Museum. Notice what he has on his head. So what did we do in this museum? We looked at displays and exhibitions on slavery, on segregation, on integration. We watched video clips of blacks in the arts, blacks in music and sports and education and medicine and science, all kinds of things, right? Now you notice he is holding his fiance's hand. He's holding her. And he loves music. His favorite artist of all time is somebody who lived right here, Elvis Presley. I love Elvis Presley. I saw Elvis about 14 times. I met Elvis and I went to Elvis's funeral. I love Elvis. But Elvis did not invent rock and roll. He certainly popularized it more than anybody else. But the man who invented rock and roll was my boss. I worked for him for 32 years. The late, great Charles Edward Anderson Berry, better known to most of you as Chuck Berry. So he likes Chuck Berry music. He likes, everybody, Elvis, Jimi Hendrix, the Beatles, the Stones, Ted Nugent, Metallica, Elton John, anybody who plays rock music, any kind of rock music, all of their DNA goes back to Chuck Berry. All right? So he likes Chuck Berry music, and Chuck had donated one of his Cadillacs to the museum. I saw it at Chuck's house, but now it's sitting in the museum, and he wants to see the Cadillac. So we go over to another part of the museum, but before we go to another part of the museum, you notice he's holding her. Here's a picture of me working with Chuck. He's playing Johnny Be Good, getting ready to go into his famous duck walk and play that guitar solo. For those of you who are too young to know who Chuck Berry is, I'm sure you all remember the movie Back to the Future. That's the real deal right there. Okay, so we go over to the other side of the museum and we look at Chuck's car. There's his Cadillac. Now who's holding his fiance? Do you all see how fast I work? That's what I'm talking about. Okay, so we're in this museum for about 2.5 hours. That is not even, you can't even crack the tip of the iceberg of the vast information in that museum in 2.5 hours. Even in 2.5 months, you still will not see it all. But I figured 2.5 hours for one day is enough. Let's go. So we go outside. I give this Klan's lady my cell phone camera. I go stand by the marquee for the museum, and I say, hey, come over here and pose for a picture with me. This is what he did. Totally unscripted, totally unplanned, spontaneous. That does not happen, folks, without conversation. That does not happen with cancel culture. You don't have to agree with somebody, but don't cancel them out. All right? Now, that's not the end of the story. It goes a lot deeper than that. Okay, this is 2 months shy of a year when he pulled out that gun and Charlottesville said, hey, nigger, boom. All right? That was August of 2017. This is June of 2018. So now, within a few weeks of this picture, our trip to the museum, he's going to marry that Klans lady fiance. Well, guess what? I've been working with them for about a year. Guess who gets invited to the Klan wedding? Right? I got invited to the Klan wedding. I said, yes, I'll go. But then it went even deeper than that, because the young lady is from Chattanooga, Tennessee, and her father was too ill to go up and do his duty of escorting his daughter down the aisle and giving her away. Rather than ask one of their trusted Klansmen on the steps trying to bang somebody in the head with the Confederate battle flag pole, they asked me if I would escort her, if I would step in and do that. Conversation, folks. I said, yeah. But I said, now listen, I need to call CNN because this has never happened before. I need this documented. They trust me. They said, okay, but please tell CNN not to film the faces of my Klan members because, they could lose their jobs, etc. I said, I understand. He says, they can film his face, her face, my face, the preacher's face. I said, okay. So I called CNN. I said, listen, you all want to do this? They said, yeah. So they came out, and they had interviewed him a long time ago. And he had said to them, I'm going to be buried in my Klan robe and blah, blah, blah. So they ran that quote of him under this wedding clip. He got married in his backyard. So here is the clip.
As you stand in the presence of God.
This time, it was Davis giving something away.
His friendship has been something really special to you.
She wanted me to be a part of this wedding. That's beautiful. That's a seed planted.
So there you have the Klansman Imperial Wizard groom, the Klans lady bride, and the surrogate father. Folks, like I said, he's come a long ways at this point. He still had a little ways to go. But the important thing is he's going in the right direction. People don't change just overnight, do a 180. That happens on TV shows that only have an hour to solve the problem, right? It doesn't happen in real life. Change occurs incrementally. But if you're willing to put in the time and apply those 5 tools I gave you, that can be the result, folks. Thank you.
Well, now you know why Daryl's a legend, not just in terms of music, but in terms of changing people's lives. Those are just incredible stories. Tell us a little bit about where the genesis of all this came from. This is an unbelievably unique path and passion. Where was the seed planted?
Well, I'm 65 years of age, and my parents were in the U.S. Foreign Service. So I grew up as an American embassy brat, traveling all over the world, starting at the age of 3. My first exposure to school was overseas. You get assigned to a country for 2 years, you come back home here to the States, you're here for a few months, maybe a year, and you get assigned to another country abroad. So my first exposure to school was over there. Classmates from Nigeria, Czechoslovakia, Yugoslavia, France, Germany, Italy, Australia, Japan. Anybody who had an embassy where we were assigned, all of their kids went to the same school, right? So I was in this multicultural environment. And because that was my first exposure to school, that became my baseline for what school should be. But every time I come home, after my parents' assignment, I would either be in all black schools or black and white schools, meaning the still segregated or the newly integrated. And there was not the amount of diversity in the classroom back here that I had overseas. So literally, I was living about 10 years ahead of my time in the future because that multicultural scenario had yet to come to this country. It's here now, okay, but it wasn't back then in the early 1960s. So one time we came back, it was 1968. I was age 10. I was in fourth grade. I was the only, there were 2 black kids in the whole school. Me in 4th grade, a little black girl in 2nd grade. The only time I ever saw her was during recess or lunchtime. So consequently, all of my friends at that school were white. And some of my guy friends were members of the Cub Scouts. They invited me to join, so I joined the Cub Scouts. We had a parade And I was the only black participant in this parade. The streets were blocked off. There was a Girl Scouts, Cub Scouts, Brownies, 4-H Club, and Boy Scouts, and whatever other organizations. Streets were blocked off. We're all marching, having fun. Everybody on the sidewalks were white, waving and cheering and, wishing us all kinds of well, until we got to a certain point in this route when suddenly, pow, I'm getting hit with bottles and soda pop cans and small debris from the street by a small group of spectators off to my right on the sidewalk. And I look to see who's throwing things, and I see this small group of people mixed in with the larger crowd. I remember it being a couple of kids, maybe a year or two older than me. I didn't know them, and a couple of adults who I assume were their parents. I don't know. But anyway, my first thought was, oh, those people over there don't like the Scouts. That's how naive I was. And it wasn't until my den mother, my cub master, my troop leader all came running over and covered me with their own bodies and quickly escorted me out of the danger. And I kept saying, why? I didn't do anything. Why are they doing this? And all they would do is kind of shush me and rush me along, tell me to keep moving. So I kept moving. They never answered my question as to why this was happening to me. So I had no clue. And when I got home, my mom and dad, who were not at the parade, were cleaning me up, putting mercurochrome and Band-Aids on me and asking me, how did you fall down and get all scraped up? I told them I didn't fall down. I told them exactly what happened. And for the first time in my life, my mother and father sat me down and explained to me what racism was. Now, believe it or not, at the age of 10, I had never heard the word racism. I had no clue what they were talking about because that word and that behavior was not in my sphere. I was around people from all over the world, and they didn't treat me like that. What my parents were saying had to be wrong. And to further enforce my theory was the fact that the people who did this to me did not look any different than my fellow Scouts or my fellow Americans overseas, whether they were my little Danish or Swedish or French friends. So it had nothing to do with the color of my skin. And you see, I didn't have big brothers and sisters to learn from their experiences passed down to me. I'm an only child. My folks got it right the first time. So, I always believed my parents. But on this day, I thought my parents were lying to me. Well, I quickly found out that they weren't lying. This phenomenon called racism did exist. So I formed a question in my mind, which was, at that age, how can you hate me when you don't even know me? And for the next 55 years, I've been looking for the answer to that question, and that's what has led me on this quest.
It's an amazing quest, and especially because just watching that and having lived the life I've lived, that kind of hate that is so visceral that you saw when the guy pulled the gun and fired the bullet, it's just hard to understand where that comes from, what the genesis of it is on their side. And for you to have the open heart to be able to go and talk to people that are just so filled with that hate, it awes me. But why do you think where do you think that's coming from? What do you think is the root of that we could actually do something about to help eliminate it? Well,
they're a white supremacist, a Klansman, a neo-Nazi, or whatever, any kind of person. They're not stamped out of a standard cookie cutter. They come from all different walks of life. There are different reasons why they would join these kinds of organizations. My grandfather was in the Klan. My daddy was in the Klan, so I'm in the Klan. My kids are going to be in the Klan. So family tradition passed down. Other times they joined because they moved to a town that was kind of a Klan stronghold. So if you wanted to do business in that town and get along, you had to assimilate. You joined the local Chamber of Commerce, the country club, and the local KKK. Other reasons could be economic, like you take a depressed town, some of the mining towns, for example, in Pennsylvania, where most of the miners are white people. And they go right out of high school, right to the mines. And they've been doing that for generations, right? Their families worked in the mines for hundreds of years. But now the mining company that owns the mines and hires the workers, now these miners are not racist at all. They make good money, they pay their bills, they're happy, right? But then the company gets greedy and says, you know what? We can lay off, our miners and hire some of those immigrants that just came in and just pay them that much money and save money. So they lay off these people, and now these people who know how to do nothing else but mine, they're out of a job. They can't work anything else, and the bank is knocking on the door for the mortgage or the loan or whatever, and they don't have any money. The Klan will come into a town like that and say, you know, the blacks have the NAACP and the Jews have the ADL, and nobody stands up for the white man but the Klan. You know, your job's not gone, but you're gone. Some such and such has your job. Come join us, we'll get your job back. And these people who are never racist, they think, you know, they're at wit's end. They don't know what to do. Well, you know, my job is still there. Why aren't I there? Well, okay, give me an application, sign me up. So it happens that way as well.
Sometimes it feels, Daryl, like we're not the United States of America, but we're the disunited States of America.
The divided states of America.
Divided States of America. Bill Courtney talked earlier about the challenges with identity. You know, I've been part of a group of people doing a lot of research on the way people process group identity in their own identity. African Americans, Latinos, Asians, whites, married, not married, with children, etc. I've done a deep dive on this with focus groups as well as some surveys. And one of the things that comes across is universally, black, white, brown, Democrat, Republican, Independent, people still believe in America as a pluralistic, tolerant, amazing American dream creating society. What really shocked me, particularly among Latinos, but also to some degree among African Americans in these focus groups, was they wanted their identity, what the political world would call their identity. They wanted that to be seen. But they did not want their entire being and self, their entire humanity to be defined by that one thing.
Right.
So I actually think group identity politics is a cancer in our country that we have to destroy, because it actually, the idea of diversity, there's a positive version of it, a negative version of it. What it's doing is dividing us and making us focus on what separates us and what creates division, rather than this beautiful thing you're doing where you're trying to understand, communicate, have the conversation, and focus on what brings people together. How can we overcome the negative aspects of group identity politics and try to, even today, this word by some is considered politically incorrect, but what we used to call the melting pot, where people came, you know, black, brown, or white, gay or straight, tall or short, fat or skinny, new immigrant or from the Mayflower, we all come here and we work together, we get along in our daily lives, we interact with people in our workplaces, in our social lives, and in our communities that are diverse in most of America, and we all get along most of the time. It's not that there aren't problems, because there certainly are, as we're discussing here, but what can we do to try to resolve this individually and culturally?
Absolutely. And what I'm telling you is, you know, I don't want you all to leave here and run to a KKK or neo-Nazi rally. You know, don't try that at home, right? But you all can do something, and I call it walking across the cafeteria. And you can do it physically, or you can do it virtually. And what do I mean by that? In a diverse city, such as Memphis, for example, you have schools, and a diverse population works there. They may be working on the same project. They might even be sharing the same cubicle. But what happens at 12 noon? Everybody goes downstairs to the cafeteria. And it's with Hispanics. They just, you know, branch off. People tend to feel more comfortable around familiarity. To leave your little comfort zone of people and walk across the cafeteria and try to sit at one of their tables, and they say, table, then yes, there's a problem and it needs to be addressed. But I would say, just take it upon yourself to walk across the cafeteria else's table. You have a lot to learn from them. You have a lot to teach them. Will guarantee you will most likely make a new friend. And you can do this at your workplace, at your whatever, right? You can also a co-worker who's in another state or another town or whatever, you'll set up an appointment with one after work, after hours, and say, hey, you know, I don't know a whole lot about you, but you know, let's you and I get together and chat your family and tell you about mine. Folks, this happens a great deal as an American. Don't get me, but this bothers me. We call ourselves, I have a little trouble with that. I would say nation on the face of this earth technologically. After all, we, Americans, to put a man on the moon, right? talk to him live from Earth all the way to the moon via satellite radio phone, live. We built that technology. Everybody in here has a cell phone. Everybody in here has email. Type a few numbers, type a few words, hit send. You're talking to people right next door in Kentucky or across the country in California or Australia, Africa, China, wherever you want to talk. We, Americans, built that technology. How is it that we, Americans, can talk to people as far away as the moon, anywhere on the face of this earth, but yet so many of us have difficulty talking to the person who lives right next door because he or she is a different color, a different religion, a different persuasion, a different whatever? It seems to me that before we can call ourselves the greatest, perhaps our ideology needs to catch up to our technology. And once we got them both up there, then we can truly brag about how great we are, all right? Because folks, thank you. We are living in the 21st century. Like I said, that does not belong in any century, let alone the 21st. We are living in space age times, so let's stop thinking with Stone Age minds.
How about that? So I'll close with coming back to your 5 core values that people share. When I mentioned that I started out in a small lily white town and all of the news I got about African Americans was from the news. And of course, this would have been around the time of the Detroit riots, the LA riots, and all the rest. That was the lens I had. And when I went to school in Wayne State and then eventually worked in those call centers and lived it, what I discovered was exactly what you said. Everybody wants the same things. People want to be in love. They want to have a family. They want to build a life. They want to grow in their community. So I think building those bridges through conversations is some of the greatest advice any of us could ever get. And I encourage all of us, the next time you're traveling and you're at a hotel bar or an airport bar, go sit next to the person that's different than you and strike up that conversation and do what Daryl says, because he's lived a life that is incredible that we all should be inspired and motivated by. Daryl, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much. And I think we have a couple more people coming on after me. When you all get done, check out Elvis. When you all get done, come down to the other side of the building on this floor and check out the band. I'm going to sit there and show you what rock and roll is all about.
I was just about to say that. You got to watch them later and see the music roll. Thank you.